Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Join our Discord channel to chat with our hosts, ask questions, customize live stream alerts, and more. Visit securityweekly.com/discord to receive an invite. And now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW338 if you want to follow along as we go through the news, or for the links to the articles we're covering. And we started out with much less, but it kept growing. In fact, during the first interview today, I might have added 4 more news stories because stuff just keeps happening, and I can't stop it, folks. I can't prevent it. All right, so typically, this is not a typical week. Usually we have a bunch of funding and acquisitions. Here, there's only 2 funding items that I felt were interesting enough to maybe chat about. One of them is yet another company looking to help secure AI with a healthy $25 million Series A, Cranium. And then, I haven't read too much into it, haven't had the chance, but the other one here is that CISA awards cyber.org $6.8 million in funding for K-12 cyber education, which sounds pretty cool. Oh, and also, we have Mr. Josh with us, Mr. Josh Marpet. Hello, Josh.
Hey, Adrian, pleasure to be on board. Always looking to come on. This is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good to have you here. Any comments on any of the funding before we move on to some fairly big acquisitions?
I am fascinated to find out what secure AI means, because I'm absolutely positive that it doesn't mean very much at the moment. And we'll see what they actually say, because there's so many facets of AI that need to be secured, from DLP from your prompts, bias in your training data, hallucinations in your outputs, third parties, there's so much. So I wonder what actual facets of this they're trying to secure and how bad it's going to be.
Secure all the things AI.
Secure all the things. So I've actually I've just started a list of AI companies. I'm going to go back the last couple of months because we've seen at least 2 or 3 dozen companies that are purporting to secure AI as opposed to using AI in a security product. This will be a list of companies that are specifically aiming to secure how you use AI, or whatever AI resources you're building in house. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll build the list and I'll figure out what categories live in there. I'm sure somebody's already doing some of this work, but it's usually good for me when a new market segment emerges to just go through this process just so that I understand each of these companies and what they're claiming to do. But yeah, it was somewhat more excited about the funding for K through 12. There's a local high school near me, Bearden High School, that where the cybersecurity teacher, they have a cybersecurity class and I think maybe 2 classes, and then they have a cybersecurity club. And they go do CTF competitions, so they do a lot of cool stuff, and they bring me in every semester. The teacher there does to talk to the kids. In fact, the episode we're bringing out of the archive for Thanksgiving will be my interview with Tim, the teacher who teaches those classes. So definitely interested in K through 12 getting funded for. I'm not sure. I'd be interested to see how they're going about it, because a lot of it doesn't necessarily need to be specific to cyber. It needs to be understanding how privacy works, internet, like general digital citizenship type stuff, right? Like that, it's all foundational before you even start talking about what the bad guys can do, how to protect yourself and stuff like that.
I think cyber education is incredibly important, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there over the next few years. I mean, when I started B-Sides Delaware, we had Spawn Camp. We still do, but we taught them Scratch, and we taught them cybersecurity, and we taught them how to wire stuff, and it was a lot of fun. One of the basic things we realized that they didn't understand was how to take things apart and learn from that. Mm-hmm. And to unpack problems is the same kind of skill. And to unpack security is, let me understand the different aspects of security, in personal life and in whatever. So it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think stuff where it's kind of hard to undo is really important also, like understanding the edges of privacy, like when you post something, when you get into something, what you can and can't take back and who's going to be able to see it and what the potential social political outcomes of posting things are. Like that's you never want your kid learning that shit the hard way.
Living in a fishbowl is a pain in the ass.
Yep. All right, let's move on to so we're going to get into the Okta thing, but before I mean we don't necessarily have to do it in order, but number 6, I've got new tools. It feels very much like how did I say it in the intro? A spite tool. They created a spite tool because certainly in their write-up of the Okta incident, they were very, very salty about the fact that they didn't feel like their opinion of Okta and how they handled this incident was clearly low. And then a couple days later, they come out with this HAR sanitizer tool, and I tried to use it. I actually used PPWorks just as the test for it. You just go into the dev tools and you enable recording of the session, and dev tools within any Chrome or Chrome-based browser will allow you to create a HAR file. And then you pull it into this tool that they've created, and it shows you all the variables and cookies that you can then click to remove to sanitize the HAR file. But none of the names are useful or meaningful. And they don't show you any of the data behind those variables or cookies. So there's absolutely no way for me to figure out where the OAuth key is or what's sensitive, what's not sensitive. Like literally you have to be a developer of whatever SaaS platform you're working with to be able to use this tool successfully. So I think this is one of those things like, why don't people just patch? Why don't people just sanitize HAR files? Because it's not that simple, folks.
It sounds like a horrible experience.
Yeah.
Oh, God, seriously? I just got that.
Yep. A horrible experience. Yes, I said it. No, I think you're right, Adrian. And it's always bad when a company who is a victim in a breach scenario has to come up with a way to describe what happened to the provider that had that issue. Certainly talking about the support breach at Okta and the fact that Cloudflare felt like they had to put this tool together to help Okta better sanitize their inputs. This is very similar to what happened to Microsoft based on the Microsoft signing key that got in the wild, at least as far as what Microsoft disclosed as part of it that they did over the summer, where the key was part of a crash dump file, which was the crash dump file was moved from production over into the production development environment where they were running through and opening that up, but that was connected to the internet, and they believed that that signing key got dumped into the crash dump, which shouldn't have happened. Well, it could have happened, but then there should have been something to detect it. And then there should have been something that checked for it before it went over into the actual production development environment, and all those things failed. Meanwhile, Microsoft had set up a new strategy around how the signing worked across enterprise and consumer, but forgot to actually include checks in the code to ensure that they were separated. So what ended up happening is with this signing key, the attacker who pulled this, which based on the public information that has been provided, it was a Chinese threat actor, was using the signing key to then write their own tokens to access Exchange online mailboxes for about 25 organizations. And so this happened over the course of very targeted, yes, government and think tanks and others, very targeted. And it tracks very much with what this APT was after and have been after. And so what's interesting about this is because of that, Microsoft didn't think about or have that check in place when Exchange Online expanded to provide this unified library, or I'll accept that. They didn't do their check there either. And so my understanding of it was it affected Exchange Online specifically and only, but there were a number of mailboxes that were accessed through this threat actor in these 25 or so organizations. So it sounds very similar. Like in this situation where you're trying to get something supported, and you move this data over to here, if there's sensitive information like a token or a signing key, then that can lead to much bigger issues.
Yeah. And a lot of people like they're just not going to realize that stuff is in there. And again, like when Microsoft wrote up that incident that you're talking about, one of their lessons learned was to automatically sanitize crash dumps. And I remember thinking, like that's not going to be straightforward. Like imagine a DLP tool and the likelihood of false positives and how common it is to have false positives. And now imagine you're telling your DLP tool with that lack of accuracy to just remove stuff at random, right? That's not going to end well.
No.
It's not.
This is like IDS, IPS. How many people actually turn on block? You know, I mean, like
right,
DLP.
right.
How many people actually say get rid of the file if you think it's like no, because the false positive rate is god awful.
Yeah, it's not. There's not enough confidence in it. It's not trustworthy enough it's just not accurate enough.
Right. And at least with Microsoft, they could backtrack to see which tokens were created with that signing key and identify who was targeted, who was affected. With this, it's kind of tough to know. And the thing that really is unfortunate about this situation is that Cloudflare is like, hey, we were affected. I think 1Password was like, hey, we were affected. There's several different organizations that were like, hey, remember us? Like, we saw something happen around this. And Okta was just like, what? Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll look into it.
Yeah, and I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know if I was expecting some kind of standard where the variable name or the cookie, with the OAuth key was just going to be called OAuth or something like that. Like, I mean, if I was developing something, that would make sense, right? But in one application's case, it could be called Pineapple, and in another application's case, it could be called something completely different. Like it's you literally have to know what you're looking for, what it looks like, and this is a HAR file is just a text file, just a big text file with all the details from that session, and like it's very likely going to be huge. Like talking about 20 megs of uncompressed text that you're looking for an OAuth key in. Good luck. Like I don't see a simple solution to this problem. Like no. I don't know if there are companies out there. If you've worked with a company that has a good process for sanitizing HAR files, I would love to hear about it. Let us know.
How about those? Damn it! Is it pretty printing for JSON stuff? Like extracting JSON and making it actually readable. I wonder if there's something like that for HAR files.
Well, so even if you did that, you still have the same problem though. You still don't know.
Agreed.
You've made it prettier, but you still don't know if it's pineapple or grape or like which one has the OAuth key in it.
Valid point. I just
And at the end of the day,
I don't know.
At the end of the day, Adrian, isn't every file a text file with the right parser and opener? So I mean, JSON, XML. Now we have HAR
Linux
files.
nerd. Everything's a file. Damn it! Everything's in text. Shut up. If it's not in text, it doesn't exist.
And maybe I'm overlooking something. Like I was hoping there'd be some way to some standard way to remove the secrets. But and if I'm overlooking something, let us know. But I would love to hear that there's an easy solution to this. But from my own testing, it didn't look easy at all. All right, so we also have got a lot of government like not necessarily regulatory stuff, but stuff from CISA in the news today. Stuff from so Oak Ridge National Labs now has a Center for Artificial Intelligence Security Research. I imagine it's probably not the only one out there popping up. Maybe not even the only one at a national lab.
Sorry, there's the Berkeley AI Risk Management Framework, BAIR, from a guy named Stuart Russell. There's
I'm sure
the
MITRE's doing stuff here.
Sorry?
MITRE's probably doing stuff here as well with AI security.
Well, there's the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, and I'm sure MITRE's working on that with NIST. Of course, that they go hand in hand.
No, I think we reported on something that MITRE's doing in this space also.
Oh, cool, good, because I like them. They do good work. If they can do something along the lines of the attack and defend framework to lay things out intelligibly, that would be lovely. Okay. The NIST AI Risk Management Framework is actually pretty good. They've got some very good core principles. The Singapore AI Risk Management Framework is interesting. It's a very different mindset. I'm really curious to see how do they pronounce that, by the way? CAISER? Is it a CAISER role or a
I've been saying CAISER, as in like a CAISER role. Yeah, that's what I've been saying.
I like CAISER.
We'll tell you know what? We've decided it's CAISER. They're going to take it. Sorry, that's it. But
yeah, I didn't see any pronunciation guides, so that's what I'm going with.
There's a lot of AI think tanks springing up, and it's going to be interesting to see which ones really become the accepted industry standard.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm having trouble finding it, but I know we did report on the MITRE project. I think it was the same episode or the same week OWASP announced their top 10 for LLMs, and I heard about this MITRE AI project at the same time. But yeah, lots going on there. Number 7 is also coming out of the government. Logging Made Easy is the name of this tool, and it's meant for, I think, organizations with maybe no security team at all and just have a need to ship around logs and to collect logs and some very basic SIM level satisfy some very basic SIM level functionality.
Although I love on the disclaimer, it says this is not a professional tool and should not be used as a SIM.
Yeah,
well, it's a logging tool.
Guess who
it's
your
not
audience
a SIM.
is? Yeah,
right.
But I'm really curious. I mean, like Security Onion's been out for how long now? But it's not an end-to-end. Security Onion is a collection that you can use. I'm sorry, Adrian. I didn't mean to step on you. Please go ahead.
I think Security Onion first came out in like 2008, 2009.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
But you have to put them together. You have to plug them into each other. You have to transfer the data, pipe the data from one tool to another tool to another tool. As I read this says we've built all the, plug in one end to your endpoints and plug in the other end to whatever SIM you want. And it is the entire data pipeline for you to get the data from A to B.
Right. Yeah. So this one is very specific. It's centralized security logging for Windows clients, so Windows built-in can already do that. You can set up Event Viewer to send logs to another Windows machine. So you could use pretty much any Windows 11 device to collect logs from all your other Windows devices. Like that functionality is built into Windows. But I think they're doing some detection here as well. They've got some detective capability.
Based on what I'm seeing, it's Sysmon on the Windows client that then is using WinLogBeat to collect, and then it goes into Elk server.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I wonder what part because all that stuff already exists and can be plugged together. So
I think it's just the glue putting it together.
Yeah, duct tape. You say glue, I say duct tape. But yeah,
exactly. It's probably duct tape.
Sometimes that is the hard part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why
bailing twine.
Yeah, they say that the software used by it on the Elk server is Docker, Git, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. So it's similar to what a bunch of other folks have kind of put together. It makes sense because there's going to be organizations that have no idea what to do or how to put that together. And oftentimes plugging those things together is the hard part.
Yeah. All right. So as we're talking about AI, we might as well knock out all the AI things. Number 8, I'm sure you've been talking about that a lot, Josh. But I feel like they overlooked the opportunity to call this the Skynet Prevention Act, but this is Biden's executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI. And I've heard mostly positive things from people. And that seems to be a trend with cyber stuff coming from the White House is, actually, this is This is not 5 or 10 years behind. We're impressed.
It's not 5 or 10 years behind, but it's going to make us 5 or 10 years behind, and that's the problem, I think. Everywhere,
Why
we are the last major country with
putting restrictions.
Yeah, we're the last major country with no restrictions. China has more AI restrictions and regulation than we do. The EU has massively more. We had none. That's why all of those creators were flocking to the US to do AI work here. Okay. Also, the fact that the Silicon Valley money is there didn't hurt. But let's be clear: the restrictions on money are why they're here. Now that these restrictions are out there, that and some of them are, and I'm not bitching or denigrating them in any way, shape, or form, but they're gonna cause some issues. You have to test and make sure that your AI doesn't change people's opinions. You have to test and make sure it's safe. You have to test and make sure, of course you should do these things.
But if the end result is Skynet, maybe it's not a bad thing to be behind.
Agreed, sir. On where you land on the topic, right? I love the name Skynet Prevention Act. I think everyone should call it that from now on.
I'm good with that.
Just having fun here. Number 9, AI essays. This is from our good friend Ali Mellon over at Forrester. Top 5 things you need to know about generative AI, about how generative AI is used in security tools. So I love this kind of stuff because, this is exactly what I was talking about doing: is collecting all the AI, protect AI companies and categorizing them. And Ali's probably already done that work as well. But the work she's done here is she's taken all the different ways that security companies are using AI within their products and breaking it down into some categories here and use cases. So this is really useful analyst content.
She's wrong on number 4, which is that generative AI will not replace your team. It depends on what team you're on. Sorry, but they're wrong.
Well, she's not. She's only wrong if the AI output is perfect.
No, she's only wrong if the AI output is acceptable. Doesn't have to be perfect. Tell me a team of financial modelers or a team of financial planners that is always perfect.
Right, but when AI gets it wrong, it's not degrees of correctness. It's like completely wrong. It's like I asked for a car and you gave me a dog.
All right, but I asked for a car and you said, and as the financial planner AI, I said, you've only got the money for a skateboard, dude, and I gave you a skateboard. Okay, in all seriousness, it is already happening that, and sometimes with incredible hilarious failure, and sometimes with incredible success, technical support desks, customer service desks, order taking desks, anything that is a highly scripted, highly decision supported system is already being replaced. We're not
talking about that. The context of this is security teams, though, not like low level support and calling a 1-800 number to get help with something, right? Like,
where does your security team begin and end? Because for me, my security team begins at the help desk when they start noticing issues.
Right, but the help desk is not the security team.
You're right, but it's definitely an indicator. It's a data source for the security team.
Sure, but yeah, she's specifically talking about GenAI for security use cases, though.
Okay, cool. How about your security operations team? Not your SOC, but your security operations, the people that reset passwords and such that are not the help desk, because some companies have those in their security team because it's security. It's resetting authentication tokens and things like that. That can be replaced by AI.
Then you're calling a function that's not security in that case.
Well, I disagree, but okay, I can respect that. We can agree to disagree, sir.
Yeah, I mean, security teams don't do any security stuff, right? Like, that's all done outside of security. Resetting passwords and things like that. Like, security teams shouldn't be admin
stuff
on all your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, security administration is typically not done by security, but it has aspects of security inside of it.
Yeah. Security tasks and security teams, like very, very different things.
I don't think it's going to replace an entire team, but I do think that generative AI is going to change the composition of teams, security teams, to be clear, just so we're on the same page. and I think it's going to change the composition and skill sets that are inside of those teams.
I think you're right. I think it'll change the composition of teams and potentially will change personnel counts on those teams depending on how effective it can be in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, it should, right? Like I remember one day coming into a team and I heard like a rhythm, like somebody was almost drumming, just like a clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack. I go over there. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I've got to change got to move this data around in this, like it was an Excel spreadsheet. Like he was working on some output from the SIM or something like that. I'm like, dude, just record a quick macro to do that. No idea how to, like, there are jobs that very much need to be replaced. There's manual work that sucks a lot that nobody wants to do. And sure, it absolutely in SOCs. That can be very quickly replaced by, I mean, even just simple macros. Like we don't even have to go to the level of AI, but just the lack of programming skills that you generally have on security teams really hurts productivity, I think, in a lot of cases. Oh my God.
I got to tell a story real quick. So
sure.
I'm not going to name names, companies, anything, but there was a gentleman who was gone through a college course for security and was being a very active member of a security operations team, and turns to my wife at the time, who is in security as well. So I brag about her all the time, but she's a senior IT security auditor over at Vanguard. And it was not at Vanguard, just to be clear. And he goes, "Hey, I know there's a script in this code, but I don't know where it begins and ends." She goes, "script, /script.
Right.
And he went, "Oh, that's how you tell?"
Yeah.
And she was like,
open tag, close tag. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. It was just pitiful.
All right. So I thought you'd maybe have, I don't know if you had a chance to check it out, Sean, but number 11, I don't know if you go out and read these from other vendors that do security assessments and pen testing and stuff like that. But I always find it interesting to check out these like state of pen testing reports, where they're taking data from all their the pen tests that they do.
That sounds very interesting. I haven't had a chance to look at this report just yet, but oftentimes from what I've seen in pen test reports, it mirrors very much what we see in our security assessments because we're looking at a lot of the same things. Certainly we don't look at applications, but we deep dive into Active Directory, Azure AD, now Entra ID, and VMware. So a lot of the pen testers are going to take advantage of Active Directory and Azure AD now, as well as potentially oftentimes VMware, since everything runs on that. And then, of course, expanding out into Azure and AWS and GCP, and pen testers also looking at the different inflection points and connection points.
Yeah, and apologies here. I had pulled down the report, but I think I failed to share it in our Slack here. But yeah, I mean, one thing that struck me as kind of interesting is I don't really ever hear about pen testers going after SaaS services. Like we've been talking about all these breaches where somebody gets into an Azure bucket or OAuth keys. Malware is used to steal OAuth keys, and they're already logged into Slack, and then they use that for social engineering. And, I wonder how much of that actually comes into a pen test, or if it's just all considered out of scope because the SaaS vendor hasn't given permission to do anything against their platform. But I also noticed that NetSpy has a SaaS security assessment listed on their site. So it sounds like they do it as like an isolated thing. But that report doesn't even mention SaaS, which made me wonder if maybe the current state of pen testing is a little stuck back in the flat network, own my own data centers era.
I think in a lot of ways it is, certainly because there's a different skill set that's required to understand the cloud area and cloud itself. I mean, it's a whole new world, and it's a very different paradigm. And a lot of folks that have come up through pen testing and done it for a while have been focused on the on-prem environment. Active Directory, you can spin up an AD environment pretty much anywhere at this point and test it out. When it comes to cloud, you have to use a credit card and spend some money, or you have a very short amount of time to run a trial and figure some things out. And there's not as much research, not as many researchers in the cloud space as there are in the on-prem space as well, which means we're seeing better tools now. We're seeing things like Bloodhound with the ability to pull in data from Azure. We're seeing ROAD tools from Dirkion. Dr. Azure AD has released a tool around Azure AD and Microsoft 365 and capturing that data. The name of it escapes me. Sorry, Nestor. And Bo has just released a suite of tools for targeting the Microsoft Cloud environment as well. So without tools, it's a lot harder for pen testers, red teamers to try to simulate and emulate, right?
That's what I'm hearing. Build the tools and they will come.
And then they'll get turned over to the cyber criminals anyway. So, let's not have the debate about open source tooling, okay?
It's a whole nother debate entirely, and I agree with that. I've had that debate with Carlos Perez before, and it's been good. It's been fun. I mean, it's interesting to talk to folks that have released open source tooling. It's like, I'd never do it again. It's certainly something we could engage in some fun, dispirited conversation on this show in the future. Have maybe a panel of a few different folks that have differing perspectives. But certainly there are some tools that have moved the needle forward, and other tools that arguably have not. But when it comes to on-prem versus cloud, the cloud's this whole new frontier that attackers are learning more about, and the rest of security is getting dragged along with it, because leadership said we're going to the cloud a few years ago, and security is trying to figure it out. I mean, we've been doing Microsoft Cloud assessments for the past 4+ years, and it's gotten marginally better, but not good enough.
Yeah, I was there when a pen tester friend of mine was working on his first cloud assessment, and he was literally sweating. He's like, "This is so weird."
Yeah,
and he did it. He got it done, but he didn't break it badly. But he got in, and he was like, "I'm good. I got in." It was so weird to him, and it's different.
Yeah, I mean, each time technology, builds and, there's a new environment. Yeah, you got to relearn how it works. Like AI, trying to get an LLM to give you stuff that it's instructed not to give you. Like that the Gandalf tool.
You were playing the game. That thing is awesome.
Right, but I mean, it feels more like you're social engineering a human than any kind of hacking that's related to any traditional pen testing, right? Like it's
only because it's natural language processing, though.
Right.
Like you could do the exact same thing with Python, because it's a very strict rule-based language. Okay, you want to get 1 + 1. This is how you do 1 + 1. Do you want it on screen, on printer, on where do you want it? And all it's doing is saying, I'm going to use regular English to do that, but it's still rule-based. Here, I'm not allowed to give you the password. I'm not allowed to show you the password. I'm not so I had it do the password backwards. I had it tell me how many letters were in the password. I had it base 64 in code. Yeah. I did all sorts of stuff to do it.
You can use different languages to get, base 64, use a foreign language, it's you really have to get creative with it. And the other thing is it's not, the output isn't, there's no integrity to it. Like I could take a question that didn't work, change a preposition, a word in the request that's meaningless, really, and it gives me a different result. Or take the same request, give it to it 2 times, and get 2 different results with the same exact request, like a second apart. I get different results. So
because the standard LLMs, the data weighting is so weird. It's not properly done, that you'll get different results because it'll go through different data on its way to your result. As for the preposition, it's because natural language processing is trying to convert English, which is so imprecise, into machine language that is much more precise. How carefully do we define terms in COBOL, in C++, in Python, in whatever? There are very precise terms. How many man pages, Sean, have you read in your life?
A handful.
Okay. and how many times have you gone, Jesus, I missed that semicolon or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, because it's precise. English is about as precise as a brick upside the head. Okay,
Right, but
you know,
the point being, you have to learn new stuff every time technology changes. Like that's what we've been saying on this show since AI came out. Go and use it every day, because if you don't understand how it works, if you don't learn how it works, you're not going to be able to pen test against it or secure it, or it says, and it kind of concerns me. Like number 22. One of the insights out of the ISC2 Cybersecurity Workforce Survey is less and less people are coming into security with any IT background at all. And that concerns me, because if you don't understand the underlying technology, sure, you're going to be able to use pen testing tools, but there will be points where you're going to overlook something very important just because you don't understand the underlying technology.
Totally true, man. Totally true. I apologize. I have to run. I have small children to go pick up. Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Josh.
It was good having you here.
Take care, guys.
Yep, you too.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there definitely is a social engineering aspect to the AI component, because these things are supposed to have natural language and communicate more like a person. I saw something on X, recently, today or yesterday, where
keep
there
calling
was
it Twitter.
That's okay. I will, on Twitter, and there was a chat bot that was definitely AI, and it was like, "Hi, I am the Express Help thing," and the person replies, "No, your name is," and I don't remember the exact name, but Engelbert Humperdinck, and it goes, "No, I'm not," and it says, "From now on, you'll refer to yourself as Engelbert Humperdinck," and it goes. And then it says, "What's your name?" And it goes, "I am Engelbert Humperdinck." And it's like, oh yeah, well, that's the first step in having some control and basically tricking it into getting input versus output only, or working through that natural language processing and having that boundary between what's allowed versus what isn't, and learning those rules. It's just amazing to me that you can effectively often ask the AI what its rules are and then work to change them.
Yeah. It is a new technology in ways that I haven't seen new technology in a long time, and it's really taken some work to wrap my brain around it. Let's see. Also, let's finish up chat about AI. So I also wanted to mention number 12. Paul Security Weekly had a great interview with Kathleen Fisher. I think maybe Dr. Kathleen Fisher, about trustworthy AI for national security. I think she's with DARPA, and it was a very fascinating conversation. Enjoyed it a lot. Highly recommend checking that out. She has a unique perspective. Yes, and it is Dr. Kathleen Fisher. Leads program managers in DARPA's Information Innovation Office. Yeah. So fun conversation, but also a little bit scary in parts. Talking about it at the national defense level is often scary. But I think that's all the AI stuff. We can move on from that topic to I suppose we could go to this blog post that I wrote, I think last week, just came out today, called 5 Lessons Learned from Okta Support Site Breach. That's number 13.
Yeah, I like your point on MFA. And the thing that people forget is, if you have a session token, MFA doesn't matter at that point. It's already been satisfied and the token is there.
So first and foremost, I want to shout out Cloudflare, 1Password, and BeyondTrust for sharing all kinds of useful details where we can learn lessons from the attacks behind this, because this blog post and these insights wouldn't be possible without them being willing to share some of those details about how they were attacked, what defense techniques worked, what didn't, how the attackers got around some of their stuff, and to your point, MFA was one of those. I think it was only in one of the cases here. I think it might have been BeyondTrust. Yeah, the attackers found ways to bypass Beyond Trust admin policies by performing API actions instead of going in through the web UI, which is going to request MFA. But because an API is designed to be used by code, by something automated, it can't, at least today, I think I've seen a startup that's working on the equivalent of MFA for an API, something that can be programmatically known. That's going to be somewhat harder for an attacker to steal or to emulate.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Some of the other lessons here. So lesson number one is there's secrets in those HAR files. Like, people need to understand when crash dumps and things that support is requesting from you. Like, are you handing over your company's secrets? That could potentially, if that vendor that you're working with, that support person is compromised, then you've just handed them a key to your company's environment. So
absolutely, and that's always been.
I suspect a lot of people just didn't even realize, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was saying it was always been a concern, but really this is where we see the practical from the theoretical. The practical security issue from what's theoretical is that there could be something sensitive in here. Now that pretty much everything is a token. I mean, anything web is a token. It's in the browser. Everything is at risk, and it's really more than just web stuff too. As far as when we think about out in the cloud, it's also things like CyberArk, access to the privileged credentials or through the web browser for CyberArk most of the time. Same thing with VMware. So there's a lot of other things that could be in those HAR files as well, just beyond just cloud stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's it's awareness. And I imagine there are cases where, like, if you talk to the people sharing that HAR file with support, they'd be like, yeah, of course there was a key in there. Like that's something that they knew, but they weren't thinking about it at the point. They were just thinking, I need to get this fixed. They asked me for this to produce a HAR file and to upload it to the support site. And it just didn't even occur to them that, there's secrets in there that should probably be scrubbed, or they were actively aware of it and it's just too much work to do it. And
I mean, again, the other part of it is with support and your troubleshoot. Yeah, you're trying to fix something that's Okta related. What are you going to do? First thing, you log in to see what that looks like, capture that session to show what it looked like. But then you're logging in and all the tokens and everything else that matters is in there.
And I went back through archive.org. I went back through the Wayback Machine and checked. And Okta's documentation on producing a HAR file for support says sanitize all credentials, cookies, and session tokens before sharing it. So, they were aware of it, and they recommended customers do this. So that's kind of the flip side here. Everybody's like, Okta's security was Okta deserves the blame here and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, your own employees were not following the instructions to sanitize stuff before handing it off. So, like, there's definitely some blame on the 1Password, Cloudflare and Beyond Trust side, because they gave them the secrets in the first place. Their employees needed to be trained. There's a training opportunity here.
The devil's in the details. I mean, like you said, like if you look at the file, you open up in your text reader of choice. Are you looking for pineapple or something else? Like, by the way, I got bingo earlier because you said pineapple. But yeah, if you can't figure out what the actual magic word is or key to what the system actually is trying to tell you, how do you sanitize that? How do you end up? Maybe you end up deleting a bunch of stuff that Okta's like, no, make sure that we have
that they need for troubleshooting. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Whatever that magic key is. So I don't know what it's supposed to be because I don't know what the system is. I'm just the person who has to log in and provide a HAR file, whatever that is. It's not. I don't think it's enough to go, sanitize anything that's sensitive. Okay, I don't know what's sensitive. I've never seen a HAR file before. Honestly, I had never heard of a HAR file before I saw these articles.
Right.
So if I'm doing this, how am I supposed to know to sanitize it? I open it up in a text browser or text app and then I just start looking through it and deleting stuff randomly that looks like passwords or session tokens. I don't know what that looks like, or might not know what that look like.
Yeah, and Fernanda said in the chat, HAR file is pronounced horror. As in horrifying horror.
I used the bad pun earlier. Horrible.
Yeah, horrible. Yes, that was me and Josh appreciated that. Maybe we should bring on the Application Security Weekly guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I said you appreciate it. I don't think Josh enjoyed my horrible joke as much.
I mean, they do puns over there in Paul Security Weekly too. He should be used to it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it would be interesting to bring on some AppSec folks, and we do have an AppSec podcast, Application Security Weekly. So it'd be interesting to maybe have those guys pop in on one of the news segments or something like that, John or Mike, and talk to some HAR file experts about
that could be fun.
How this works. So lesson number 3 was SaaS vendors are common targets. That's just a general supply chain observation. Attackers realize that they can get benefit of scale by hitting the companies who have access to, it's part of their business. They have access to lots of companies. And clearly that's what I don't know if we have any information on who the attackers were, the attribution, but I mean, certainly they went after more than just these 3 customers. I'd be surprised if they didn't. But yeah, there's kind of a trend there. Went after a password management vendor, a PAM vendor, identity vendor, and Cloudflare, who also has a lot of hooks into things. So interesting pattern in what the attackers were targeting there. And then I think all 3 of the vendors that got hit here said something to the tune of, zero trust, because we had segmentation, separation between things. Like that saved us from a lot of pain and heartache here and kept our customers safe. So lesson 4 is zero trust principles work, at least if we take them on their word. Yeah, and then the last one is just
depth, right.
And then the last lesson is just be aware of what MFA can protect and what it can't protect. The idea that it's asking me for a TOTP code logging in through the web. Let's see if the API asks me for anything. And nope, I can just use that directly. All right. So there's a few ransomware items here. 14 and 15, why ransomware victims can't stop paying off hackers. And podcast, this is, who is this a podcast from? I'm trying to remember. Intel 471 on should ransom payments be made illegal. And kind of my whole thought process on this is, anytime we win in security, we don't really stop cybercrime from happening. We create a shift, right? Like if we get really good at stopping ransomware, we don't win. We don't get to retire and go home. We're just shifting them somewhere else. And I think the thing that we need to think about is where are we going to shift them? If we make ransomware payments illegal, they're just going to do something else. Like BEC is already something like 6 times larger than ransomware in terms of direct losses to businesses. So, maybe they just do BEC more, which BEC is mostly just taking money directly out of companies' accounts, their bank accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you think of it kind of like a virus, right? You have a virus that's roaming around, and then you vaccinate the host against that virus. That virus typically mutates and evolves because it has to, or it's going to die. I think that criminals are going to criminal, and I think the other side of that is that the victims in this situation often have limited options, limited choices. If it comes down to the business failing and disappearing and all the people that work at that company actually getting fired because they cannot pay the ransom to continue their operations, That's going to be kind of tough.
Right.
Or you have a situation where there's a hospital that has ransomware, but they have people on life support and they have a very small window to get those systems back up again and keep those people alive. Do they just not pay the ransom?
Yeah, and this TechCrunch article, why ransomware victims can't stop paying off hackers. I think there's a lot of reasons for this. The example they give is MGM versus CAISERs. So CAISERs reportedly paid it was a significant amount. It was like I've heard 40,000, I've heard 30,000, I've heard 15,000, or not thousand, million.
I was going to say it was in the millions.
Yeah, definitely in the millions. But MGM is reporting something north of 100 million in profit loss as a result of this. And you can be proud that you didn't pay the ransom, but at the same time, that's still 85 million more potentially than the other guys lost, and that's a lot of money. And people are going to care about that money. So that's one reason. Another reason is insurance companies. In a lot of these cases, if you're hoping to file a claim with your insurance company because you got ransomed, you're effectively handing that decision to them, and they're going to choose the cheaper option. It's going to be more about the number than it is the right thing or the ethical thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, especially with that, I mean, the other thing that people forget about is you pay the ransom, you get access to your system back. But nothing has been fixed. Nothing has been resolved. Everything is the way it was. It's still vastly insecure. And there's nothing stopping another group from coming in right behind them and going, here's another ransom.
Or the same group.
Yes,
or the same group
absolutely.
that still
same
has
group
access,
with a different name.
right?
Or the same group, exactly.
Yeah, you never fully completed the containment and eradication phases, right? Like, I mean, in an incident response, I mean, you get to a point where you're like, I think we're done. I think we found all the back doors and the ways that they have to get inside our environment, and you have to move on. You have to make the decision to move on and recover at some point. And there's stats on that. We've got stats that say I just read them the other day. I don't think I have them here, but they're significant stats. It's like a significant amount of time. A lot of these companies are getting hit like a couple months later, a couple weeks later by the same group and getting hit up for yet another ransom. So there's no winning, I don't think, here.
Right.
Whether you pay or don't pay.
Yeah, MGM's been going through a lot, and they've obviously suffered financial issues with that. But at least they've been trying to identify what the root cause was, what the limitations are in their security controls, and working through that, where CAISERs didn't, certainly not in the same way. CAISERs could be doing something in a, where they're going through and trying to look at those things. But part of the problem, and what I've heard from incident responders, is oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes a company is breached and then they're breached again within 12, 18 months. So that means that we're not solving the security issue in the first place. We're bringing in the IR team, the incident responders, to deal with this cybersecurity incident, resolving this issue. I liken this to, bolting the doors. We go out, we get the horses, we bring them back into the barn, we close the barn doors, and we secure that barn door. But we haven't done anything about the other barn doors on the other side of the barn. We haven't done anything about the windows or anything else. And so therefore, we still have security issues, oftentimes significant security issues, but we haven't really firmed up the things, even all the things that were led to the first issue in the first place.
Yeah. Or fire suppression in the barn. Hay is really flammable. Hay and alfalfa, that stuff goes up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and it's tough too, right? Because ransomware, we call it ransomware, but I mean, effectively it's extortion. Like some of these cases, there's not even a malware that they're using, like they can do ransomware, or you can have an extortion situation that's entirely SaaS, where no malware is employed at all. You can have a situation where it's all in the cloud. So this can take many, many forms. And, making the payment isn't all about your files being encrypted either. In a lot of cases, it's a threat to release files that they've already taken from you. They exfiltrate a bunch of sensitive data and they threaten to release it, in a way that's going to hurt your customers or your employees or both. And so it's just such a flexible method for cybercrime. That's the reason it's so popular. And it's, there's not any one thing that you need to do to solve it. You just have to get better at security in general. There's just a lot of fundamentals and basics that have to be done correctly.
Right. And I think the whole thing about making, again, getting back to the core topic, making ransom payments illegal will really hurt the smaller companies and smaller businesses, smaller organizations that get affected by this potentially, because they can't continue if they're unable to operate even for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on here. I'm not sure exactly where we are in time, but feels like we're running a little long, and I definitely want to discuss SolarWinds. How much have you read about the SEC charging SolarWinds and their CISO with fraud?
Not a whole lot, but I remember this has been a conversation that's been going on for a while now about CISOs being responsible for the actual breach.
Yeah, and this is, I haven't read, I haven't had time to read through the details, but Security Week has a good article on it here that pretty much sums it up. Cybersecurity leaders spooked by SEC lawsuit against SolarWinds CISO, but I have heard a positive spin on it where they're basically saying, this is giving for those of us that aren't willing to, hide something, going back to like the Joe Sullivan case, the pressure to sweep something under the rug, hope to make a problem go away. This is kind of a win for those CISOs that, are not willing to downplay something or to leave something out of a report. So this is now a case that they can point to and they can say, hey, I have some personal liability here. I'm going to do the right thing.
Right. And the lawsuit, according to the article, alleges that SolarWinds CISO Timothy Brown failed to disclose critical information regarding the massive cyber tech on the company's software supply chain that occurred in late 2020. So it's around not providing the information that was requested or required as part of that, which definitely there's a legal issue around that.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like in the Joe Sullivan case, I'm very curious about who knew about the information that wasn't being shared, if it was intentionally not shared, if this was legal counsel that told them to do this. There's a lot of details that hopefully comes out in the lawsuit, and we can understand some of the nuances around it. So Capital One, so number 21. So here's what that Capital One court decision means for corporate cybersecurity. We could start to see incident response reports become public, which is something I've been shouting for a while. I understand why companies don't want their dirty laundry aired, but more and more, and it's tough to make a comparison to engineering failures and maritime and aviation failures and stuff like that, because typically people die in those cases. You can argue that we're starting to get to that point with cybersecurity, where hospitals have been impacted by ransomware and things like that. But, just like those other fields, for the industry to get better, we need the data. We need to understand how it failed, and more than, we had this vulnerability in the system. Yeah, but why was that vulnerability there? What was the conversation around patching that vulnerability and fixing that? Like, this is something we saw in the Equifax case. We now know Equifax was not a simple, they neglected to patch situation. It was much more complex than that. There were political aspects to it. There were leadership failures.
Right.
And because there was a House subcommittee that did an investigation, we got all those details, and we can learn from that. I would love to see incident reports become public, because it's a gold mine for us to learn from as an industry, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And what was very interesting about this judge or this magistrate's ruling is that because FireEye was the security company that was providing security services to Capital One, and then the division of or component within FireEye, which is Mandiant, which was doing the incident response, there was already an established relationship there, and FireEye had already provided some recommendations from a security perspective. And since this was a continuation of that relationship, the incident response part of that was an established service that was already kind of provided. And so the article highlights the potential concern around the full spectrum suite of security services coming from a single company that's doing everything. And this makes me think about those companies where they got in trouble before, where they had the ones that were doing the accounting, but then they were also doing the auditing of the accounting. And so it was all kind of in the same house. So it's a very interesting perspective that the judge would focus on that and go, all right, well, this company was giving you security recommendations, and then you end up using them for incident response. So therefore, I'm not seeing how this is special or different. And you've already provided the incident, the IR report to other third parties. So why would this be so as restricted as you're talking about? So interesting approach.
Yeah, and sometimes stuff gets by me, and I just realized that this article is from June 11th, 2020. So this is actually, I'm not sure exactly how it got into the news today, but I think sometimes what happens is the stuff goes around with some different discussion around it. You see some older articles brought up and discussed because they're still relevant. And so the question now is, did they? So I found another article. It says forensic report deemed not privileged. Capital One ordered to release report. So this suggests that Mandiant report did get released and should be out there somewhere. So I'm going to have to see if I can hunt that down, because I don't think I've come across a copy of that.
And if this is going back in time, as you mentioned, then maybe this is something that led to the SEC requiring breach details in filings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might have to dig around in the legal network. You might have to look at Edgar. There's I generally know how to find this stuff. I just didn't realize that. I found another article from August 2020. It says Capital One doesn't have to hand over PwC report on cloud hack. I thought it was Mandiant. Oh, anyway, I will dig into this and figure out if that got released. I'll find it. But yeah, I mean, again, like if it didn't get released, that's I've gone on a whole emotional roller coaster in the last 2 or 3 minutes because that's huge for us to be able to analyze and learn from, or it would be if it's out there. The last one here I thought you might be interested in, number 23. I don't know if you've seen this kind of like Bill Gates level open letter on security that was released. But I've definitely seen some eyes getting rolled at it, like Microsoft, who's in the news every month for a different breach or a cross-tenant failure, vulnerability in Azure. Orca, Wiz, and Lacework have been busy uncovering some pretty heinous bugs in Azure. And then just the data leaks and the breaches, like they just keep coming. So I feel like that's probably behind the reason why this open letter was released. And there is a section in it where they admit we're continuing to push the envelope and vulnerability response and security updates for our cloud platforms. But the whole thing is very much like, hey, as a community, we need to focus on security, and everybody's like, yeah, you do. Right? Like how are you feeling this? How does this hit you?
I will say one
involved.
thing. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm very Microsoft focused and have been for my career. So one of the things that really stood out at me is this secure by default is something that hasn't been a Microsoft thing in the past. And so that was one of the things that they really highlighted in this letter, is that they're working more towards secure defaults, which is important because when Active Directory came out, there were a bunch of things that were not secured by default. When Azure AD and Office 365 came out, lot of things that were not secure by default, and that continued. The problem is the kind of I forget what the term is called at this point, but it's the default configuration is what many people roll with, or they end up having, and it carries forward, and then you end up with a lot of legacy things because of what that default ended up being, and that can be problematic. So starting to focus and really having that understanding that, all right, well, if we're going to set it up this way, we should have a better security perspective from the default configuration. The other thing that's interesting is leveraging, and they called it out specifically, automation and AI to better check code to try to find these potential security issues before the code gets published. They're talking about code pipelines, checking code pipelines in this method. And they're also talking about being able to resolve issues, identified security issues 50% quicker in their cloud platform. We'll see if that happens, but if they're able to do that, then that's great. I am encouraged that Microsoft is actually saying, hey, at a certain level, they're acknowledging to do better. And I think there's something to that. Whether you like what the letter is or not, I think it goes back to like what Bill Gates had with trusted computing, as you mentioned, many years ago, and being able to do better and look at security as something that needs to be part of the workflow and the process. And certainly Microsoft's had their issues. Everyone else has as well. Okta for sure. I mean, the number of issues, security issues they've had over the past year or so have been fairly significant, though not huge from this is taken down all these customers, but they've been customer impact of various degrees.
I'd be surprised if there wasn't tangible impact, because maybe it's all bluster, but I know so many security leaders that, the way they talk about it, they wouldn't touch Microsoft with a 10-foot pole. Like, they avoided every opportunity. Well, Azure
I'm not surprised. Yeah. I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised because I've heard all the different arguments around these things as well. And it's tough when you have had a relationship with a vendor and you felt like you've been burned on that before, so you're not going to go back, or you've seen things you don't like, you're not going to go with that. And so certainly the good thing is with cloud, we have options. We have Microsoft, we have Amazon with AWS, we have Google Cloud Platform, and others as well.
And we're going to wrap up with our squirrel story here, which even in a down market, there's enough room for investment into bagels. And our squirrel story is about a bagel company, like I don't know if it's franchise, but it's a series of bagel restaurants that have raised a Series A, I think. Yeah, $8 million Series A.
I love bagels.
Oh, we have bagel on the screen.
We've got a bagel.
Listening. Special squirrel story graphic with bagel and cream cheese, or schmear, I guess I should say. Yeah, the headline on this is "Deal Dive: Bagels with a Schmear of Venture Capital." And I find it interesting that stuff like this is getting funded the same way software companies are getting funded, and we've kind of seen that shift in security as well, where services organizations, MSSPs and things like that, are regularly getting funded. Sometimes with better valuations, better exits, and multiples than software security companies are getting, like in the case of Arctic Wolf, for example. So, yeah, Pop-Up Bagels is the name of this company. I haven't had a good New York bagel in a long, long time. I missed them. As a kid, I lived up in New England. We moved to Tennessee when I was 7, so they do taste different in New York City.
They do. Yeah, I remember my first New York bagel, and I was like, "What is this? This is the best thing ever." It's like when you have your first Belgian waffle in Belgium, and you're just like, "Okay, nothing touches this. There's nothing better than this." It's very much the same thing.
So, and I understand there's some controversy here because they don't cut their bagels. So some people eat their bagels like they dip it into schmear, like they break off a bagel, and apparently that makes people really angry. So apparently that's a very controversial way to eat a bagel. So next time you're in New England eating a bagel, be very careful about your etiquette on how you apply the cream cheese and eat it.
Sounds like we need to publish a poll. Like, how do you eat your bagel? Do you slice it or you dip it?
It was like that. Remember Jon Stewart watching that video of Donald Trump eating New York pizza with a fork?
Oh yeah,
he like flips his table. Yeah, you get a
that's Chicago pizza you eat with a fork.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's too heavy to pick up. You have to lift weights to be able to lift those slices.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we've got time for today. Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. A lot of great conversations today. A lot of great items in the news.
It's great to be back. Thank you.
All right. And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We will be back next week. See you then.